Welcome everyone. In today's video I'm going to be talking to you about doing additional measurements on your body for our Surefit Designs dress kit pattern. Now these measurements that I'm going to show you is going to help you to already cut out some of the fitting problems you might have for your initial fit. Now if you are not a Surefit Designs customer, you want to carry on watching because these measurements will also help you when you are doing any fitting changes to your commercial patterns. Now as you know, in your dress kit instruction book we ask you to do 11 measurements. Those measurements are also shown on our how-to DVD, as well as there's a couple of videos on the Surefit Designs YouTube channel where Glenda takes you through those measurements. Now that is 11 measurements that we ask you to take. I'm going to show you how to do an additional 6 measurements. So the additional measurements that I'm going to ask you to do is your bicep measurement. Once you've done that bicep measurement, I'm going to show you how to do that cap length measurement. You are going to do a front chest measurement for me. You're doing a back blade measurement, and you are going to do your back waist length measurement for me as well. And then we are going to do an armhole depth. Now the armhole depth works for me because I've got a bigger bicep, and I'm sure that some of you out there with a bigger bicep measurement have felt that that dress kit is just, or that sloper is just too high under the arm. So for me this is also an important thing that I want to tweak before I even make my first sloper. Now to help me today, I've got my friend Jackie here. She's going to be playing model for us. So I'm going to ask Jackie to just come so we can work on her body, and I can show you how to do the measurements. Now Jackie is becoming my tester as well when we are doing the new design and sew alongs. I'm sure if you've done the S-Mac cardigan, you've seen the photo where I share Jackie wearing her S-Mac cardigan. We've got two totally different body shapes, so it helps me to see someone else in what I'm designing. Now the measurements, as I said, I'm just going to show you the additional measurements. I'm not taking you through all the measurements that you need to take. Please make sure that you go and look at those videos for the how-to DVD and the Surefit Designs YouTube channel. So I'm going to start off by doing Jackie's bicep first. So when I'm doing the bicep measurement, and I'm going to ask Jackie to just turn slightly, I'm going to bring this tape measure under the arm, and I'm going to ask you to go down, and I'm going to do the measurement there. Now where I'm doing this measurement, I am keeping my finger, and just lift your arm for me, Jax. Oops, we've got it entangled there, and I've already got a tape on here where I've measured her shoulder point. So I'm going to go from that shoulder point, and I'm measuring to where I've got that measurement that I've taken for the bicep. You can also go and take a water soluble pen and make a mark for yourself if it's going to help you with the measuring. So that is one of our measurements. The front chest measurement that we're going to do is especially helpful if you are someone with a bigger bust and you've got a smaller measurement across your chest. So I am going to be taking it from this crease to the crease that I've got there where my armhole will usually run. So I am going to just take it, and I'm just coming to go across there. I'm going to put my tape there. I'm going to go across to her chest, and I'm doing that measurement. Now once I've done that measurement, I am going to either make a mark on her body, or I just keep my finger there, and from the shoulder line that I've drawn on the masking tape that I've placed on her shoulder to show me where that shoulder line is going to be, I am going to go and I'm going to take that measurement, so that when I'm working with my pattern I know exactly where to go and measure that pattern. Now turning Jackie sideways, I want you to have a look at her body here, and I think I already know that Jackie's got this bit of roundness here. So we've done a sloper for her before, and she definitely needs a shoulder dart to shape. You can even see on the shoulder blade there, she's got on the one side more of a prominent shoulder blade. So even if she didn't need additional length for this roundness, I would still suggest that she stays with a shoulder dart to actually shape this area. Remember, a dart is there to take that straight or flat fabric and conform it to the shape of our body. So again, I am looking where I've got this crease line over there and that crease line over there, and I am going to be measuring. Now if you've got more roundness on this area, you can also go and measure slightly higher. It usually works out if we work from that crease line to that crease line. So I'm just going to be measuring here now, and I do like to just push my tape a little bit so there's a little bit of movement, but I am doing body measurement. I'm not considering ease at the moment. That I'm going to do when I'm working with my pattern. Now as soon as I do get that measurement, I will be measuring from that shoulder line again down to where I have measured her. So that is going to be your other measurement. We've just done all the measurements because we are busy redoing a sloper, so I'm going to ignore this measuring tape that I have there. I'm going to work with the waist, where I've put this elastic on the waist. Now this is going to then guide me when I measure from the protruding bone that she's got on the back of her neck to where waistline is. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to do that measurement, and I think let's turn you this way, Jax. So oops. So I'm going to place my tape measure right there on that bone, and I'm going to go and I'm measuring to where her waistline is, and I'm going to write down that measurement. Then the last measurement that we are going to do is the armhole depth. Now there is really two ways that we can do it. One way is where I'm just going to be putting the tape measure across the chest. I'm bringing it under that arm and I'm coming across the back. I've already made a slight blue, very faint blue mark on Jackie's back so that I know where that measurement is going to be. So we can either do it that way, or another way that we can do it, we're going to put the tape measure around the neck, and then I'm bringing it under her arms, and that way also it's not going to shift. It allows me to really get this tape under that arm, under her arm there. And if I do that, I will go and do my mark on her body. You can't see it there. This is a water soluble pen that I've used, but now to take that measurement, I am going to go and take it from that protruding bone to there, and I am going to write down that measurement. Make sure you're working with accurate measurements. Those length measurements must be accurate, otherwise we're going to see all sorts of other issues happening, which is a pattern drawing problem and not really a fitting issue that we've got to sort out. Now, talking about fitting issues as well, with Jackie's roundness of her back, when we do a sloper and we're not accommodating the extra length and the shape of her body, we are going to find that we are getting from this armhole almost going to the center of the back, we are going to be getting diagonal drag lines. Now that already tells me that there's going to be added length needed over there. What happens with our fabric, it always, where it needs it, it's going to be trying and pulling it from somewhere else. So that is one thing that we will notice, is those diagonal lines. And then again, remember, darts are there to shape that fabric to our body, and she needs shaping on this area. And that is also why I'm going to be adding that shoulder dart when I am going to be creating length if she needs it. Now there's additional information on our website where you can download leaflets. There's an option 1 and option 2 to create shoulder darts, and the one will give you the added length. Sometimes someone will have the correct length, but they do need shaping on this area because of a prominent shoulder blade. And then you can do option 2, which is going to give us the shaping by adding the dart but not adding extra length there. So that is just a quick demonstration for you on the additional measurements that we do need. Thank you, Jackie. So we are going to move on to the our table now. We are going to be drawing Jackie's pattern for her, and then I'll show you how to apply these additional measurements that we've taken just now. Let's have a look now at the changes I'm going to do to Jackie's pattern. My black marker is my pattern that I've drafted using her measurements and my Surfer Designs grading dots that I have on that master pattern. I didn't do any fine tuning on it, so it is really out of the box how I've drawn it for her. Now, any red lines that you're going to see was the changes that I needed to do to a pattern, so that we're already busy fine tuning that pattern before she's going to cut it out for her first sloper that she's going to test. Now when I measured her across the chest, I also did a measurement from the shoulder down to where I did that across chest measurement. So I'm going to be using both of those measurements. So my first step is really to go from that shoulder point, and whatever that measurement is that I got, I'm going to make a mark for myself. Now I have done a faint line for myself in a pencil to the center front. It's going 90 degrees out of that center front, just so that I've got a guideline where I want to measure. Now Jackie's chest measurement was 36 centimeters. I'm going to be working in centimeters. I will put the inches for you on the video as well so that you can follow along. So that is 36 centimeters, but that was the full measurement from the left to the right of her body. I'm working with half a pattern, so I need to only work with half of that measurement. So that is going to give me a 18 centimeter measurement that I've got for her body. Now that is a body measurement. There is no additional ease added to it. So I've got to also now add my ease. Now when I'm working on the front, I like to give about 6 millimeters to 1 centimeter ease across the chest area here, and that is going to then give me in total, if I'm working with both sides of the pattern, it's going to give me 1.2 to about 2 centimeter ease. For me, that is more than enough for the front. On the back, you will note that we are going to be adding more ease. Our movement is always forward when we are moving. So I'm going to then take her 18 centimeters, which is body measurement, and I'm going to add for her 1 centimeter, and that makes it 19 centimeters. So all I'm going to do on that line, I'm measuring my 19 centimeters and I'm going to make my mark over there. Once I've done that mark, all I have to do is reshape that armhole. So make sure that you don't adjust anything at the shoulder point. We don't want to adjust anything at that underarm. I'm really just scooping in this area where she usually has a lot of excess fabric on her body. So that is the change. You can see the amount that's actually being removed from her pattern. Also, I'm just going back to this point. You have to make sure that you're adding ease to that measurement. So I'm just doing it again. Half of the body measurement for the chest was 18 centimeters. I am adding 1 centimeter ease for Jackie. That takes it to 19. From my center front, I'm going to measure and I'm going to make a mark for myself where I want this to actually scoop out on her body. We are not affecting any of her circumference on this area. I'm just giving her a better fit on this area across the chest. And that is really all we have to do with that across chest measurement. Make sure that it's quite a pleasing line. You know what a pattern looks like, you know what that armhole looks like, and make sure then that that gives you a good curve. I use my Surfer Designs clear stylus when I am doing any of these changes because I can see my line under it. So as soon as I place this there, you can see, I can see the original lines showing through. So that is just really a very quick, easy adjustment to help us get a little bit closer to the fit that we want. And now I'm going to just give you another tip before we move on to the back pattern. So what I like to do when I am working with my one-on-one fittings, I like to actually give a little bit more. I go 1 dot bigger on that grading dots that we have on our master pattern. So on the waist for the front, I go 1 dot bigger. On the back, I go 1 dot smaller. I am giving a little bit more fabric to the front and I'm just taking off a little bit from the back. I find in my fitting with my customers that we always end up with a lot of extra fabric on that back and it feels as if it's pulling tight over the tummy. Remember, we've got more of a curvature happening on our tummy, and on the back area we most likely quite flat on that area where the waistline is. So for me, shifting the side seam line by going 1 dot bigger on the front, 1 dot smaller on the back, I just find I get such a good fit when we do our initial fit. Now I'm going to do the pattern work here so you can see what I've done. I have drawn a faint pencil line there because when I'm drawing my pattern, I would go and do a line from that dot that I've gone bigger, and Jackie was 36 on the waist. I've gone to a 37, and I'll take it back to where my dot is. Now Jackie is also a D cup size, so before I'm going to draw this in on a marker, if it's a pencil line, it's easy, I can erase it, but I am first going to true this bust dot. If you haven't trued any of your dots before, this is a must. Every time when you are working with your patterns, please true this dot. If I move it anywhere in my pattern, if I'm doing dot manipulation, true your dot. We want to make sure that this dot extension, or I sometimes call it that dot roof, is going to be accurate for when I am sewing my fabric or that side seams together. So how we do it, and Glenda does have on the Surfer Designs channel, she's got full details for you on actually doing this dot perfection. I'll put the link for you in the description box. But what I like to do, I just fold my paper so that I'm basically on that point. It just makes it easier for me when I'm going to be drawing a line. I don't have excess fabric that's actually bubbling on me. So I fold it at the dot point, and then all I'm going to do, I'm folding out this dot. And really, we do suggest that you perfect your dots before you do anything else. So many times, if the pattern isn't drafted correctly, then we find that we have a pattern, how can I say that? It's not a fitting issue, it's a drafting issue that we get. So we want to make sure from the start that we are working with an accurate pattern. Now, once I've folded this out, and I'm just going to put a little bit of my removable tape over there, I want to make sure that from my underarm to my dot where my waist is, I want a straight line. So all I'm going to do now to true this dot, I'm going to draw a straight line. Again, Glenda does do in detail where she actually sews a sample on fabric where you don't true the dot, and she shows you what happens. It looks like a fitting issue, but it really isn't a fitting issue. It is a drafting problem or a drafting mistake that we've done. So can you see where I've now done that straight line? If I didn't do the straight line when I'm sewing, I've got my fabric going slightly in to the dot section over there and then going out again. It is a slight change that we need to make. Now when I do this as well, I want to make sure that that dot extension is going to be accurate. So I'm just going to put some of my tracing paper there, and I'm just going to, on that new line, I am just going to make a mark for myself so that I can finish the side seam line. Let's just open this up. Let's just lift it there. So let's have a look at how this changed the pattern. And this is really, for me, it works so well when I do this with that bigger dot. I know I'm repeating it, but I've done it in one of my retreats when we did our bodice fitting. I have done it for my one-on-one customers, and it really does help with fitting that bodice so that you've got a much more comfortable fit on the front of your pattern. So now you can see that is really what's been added on when I close the dot, and this is going to give me a straight seam from underarm point to that new waist point that I've done. Now that is the pattern work that I needed to do with Jackie. Now where I've gone and I've actually taken off that amount, I had to come in for Jackie. Some of you might find that your measurement is bigger than what your pattern is that you've drafted, and you might be having a mark, let's say about there, and you've got to redraw that armhole so that you've got enough fabric for your chest. All of us are built differently, so that is also an option that you will get, is that you might need to add on. If you are doing any changes from that original pattern for me, if I'm scooping in or if I've got to add on a little bit on that area, you are going to measure your new armhole for me. Now when I measure, I love using the curve runner. That curve runner for me, I just find I get a more accurate measurement instead of having my tape and running that tape on its side. For me, if I do it this way, I'm always getting 2 or 3 different measurements. With my curve runner, I find I am quite accurate. But please go and measure that for me. Remember, the armhole and our sleeve cap must be balanced. So as soon as I do a change here, like with Jackie's that scooped out, I actually added on 1 centimeter to that measurement. That is 3/8 of an inch that it ended up adding on from that original measurement. So that means I've got to go to my sleeve cap. I'm going to measure my sleeve cap, and if needed be, I will have to add on to that sleeve cap. Now, if we look at the front armhole compared to our sleeve cap, which is on the front part of our sleeve, there's got to be a difference of 1 to 1.3 centimeters. Now that is giving us 3/8 of an inch to about 1/2 inch that my sleeve cap needs to be more than what this front armhole is. We'll talk about the back one just now, but for the front, that is more or less the difference that I need so that I can ease in the cap into my armhole. I am working with a pattern for a woven fabric, so I've got to make sure that my pattern is really balanced properly. Now, one final tip that I do want to share with you as well, and I'm sure you've wondered, why on earth did Elsaby go and draw the center line so long as well as this dot? Now, when I work with my customers, when we did my retreat last year with a couple of ladies, when I do my one-on-ones, I prefer to have a full bodice to work with. I like having my skirt portion already onto the bodice section. I just find that that gives me a much better idea of how the garment is sitting on the body, where I want to fine tune it, where I want to make changes. For me, it's also a quicker way because it's one step that I have that I'm doing. I'm not making the bodice and then afterwards I have to now test the skirt as well. And I don't draw the full skirt. I actually draw it up to where I have the low hip or just below the low hip, more or less where I like the top to sit on my body. So let me just set it up so I can show you this final step when I am drawing my pattern. So when I'm going to add the skirt now to my pattern, you can see I just take my tracing vellum. I make sure that where I have that sideways T, that I am lining it up to the sideways T, and I'm just going to move it again, that I have here on my skirt section. So it's really, really easy lining it up there, and then I make sure that my center line that I've drawn, this is the center front, where I've extended it, it's also on my center front of my skirt. You'll see then automatically my dot that I had there is lining up to my grading dots that I have on my pattern, and it's lining up on that dot 37. Remember, Jackie is a 36, which gives us in centimeters here, it was 91.4 centimeters. So I've just gone one size up on those grading dots. Now, I'm not going to be drawing the full pattern here. I just wanted to show you how I'm going to do this waistline. You are going to follow the steps that you have in your instruction book or your how-to DVD, and you are just going to mark where your high hip measurement is, your low hip measurement is, and then you're going to finish that side seam line for me. But on the dot now, what I like to do, because I've already got that center line of the dot running down, I am not going to be using this measurement dots that's there for me to line up. I've already got everything together, so for me it is really easy to just go and take my template. Now I'm going to use the skirt front dot, and you can see that says waist guideline. I've drawn my waist guideline on the bodice there. I do have the tip of my dot there, but when I'm working with the pattern together, I really don't need to worry so much about it. I am going to now make sure that I'm getting the tip of my dot there, and I will extend the line basically into the dart legs that I have there. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that my waist guideline is lining up with my waist guideline that I've drawn on my bodice, and then I'm going to make sure my center line here is gone into where I've got that dip there, and if I extend it there, I can see I'm going to be exactly in that point there. So I'm just going to go and just do my mark like that. I don't even go all the way up. From here I really just go and I extend it. Now I am just going to move for now my pattern out from under here. I don't want to get any marker lines on it. Remember, you are going to do that side seam on your own with your body measurements. I'm now going to go and I'm connecting that tip of my dart there. I'm going to connect to the dart leg that I have on that waist guideline. And that is how easy it is for me to go and add that bottom waist section for the skirt portion of my pattern. Now, one thing that I also just want to bring under your attention is that when I'm working with my pattern as it is, where I've already gone and added my skirt section to my bodice, if I go and work this full dot, I'm going to get drag lines coming from the hip to the waistline where I've got that dot. It is quite a lot to take out in one dot if I'm working with the full dot as it is there. It's fine if I'm working with my bodice separately, with the skirt section separately, and I go and sew the dot and I sew my pattern pieces together and I've got a seam line running there. But in this case now, for a full bodice like this, you are going to have to do half a dot for me. So in this case now, all I'm going to do, I've already measured it out. So for me in centimeters from that center line, it worked to 9 millimeters to either side. I rounded it off to 1 centimeter or my 3/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to go and do this dot line for myself. Now this is always on my basic blueprint that I've already fitted. So sometimes, depending on the design that I'm doing, I want to have the full volume. And other times when I'm just doing a normal top, with my bodice top with a bit of shaping, I go and I will use my half a dot volume over there. So that is really what I do when I am doing my pattern fitting, and I hope that this is going to help you when you are working with your Surfer Designs dress kit, just to have these additional tips so that you can fine-tune your pattern before you go and cut out your fabric for that first test to see how it fits on your body. I'm now going to look at the back pattern, and I'm going to take Jackie's measurements that I've done on the back, and I'm now going to use it on the pattern here. Now the black marking again, or my black marker, is the pattern as I've drawn it using the sizing dots or that grading dots on our master pattern for Surfer Designs dress kit. So that is how that pattern looks now. You'll note also that as with the front pattern, I've extended that center front line, I've extended that dot line, because I will be adding the skirt section afterwards. I won't be doing it now. In the demonstration, I have shown you on the front pattern how I actually add that skirt section. So let's have a look now at the measurements that we're going to use. When I measured Jackie, I did 3 measurements. I did her a cross back measurement or a cross blade measurement to get the width that we're going to need, and again from shoulder point I measured down to where I have done that measurement. So that was our first measurement. I also did a length measurement where I did from that protruding bone and I measured to her waist. I had elastic on the waist. I did that as a length measurement. And then an additional measurement that I started working with last year. I haven't done it before, but it is working quite well for me. I also did a measurement where I measured down to get the armhole depth. So I've drawn a line here so you can see where the pattern, the armhole depth for the pattern is. So that was the 3 measurements we've done. So my first measurement that I'm going to look at before I actually start doing anything else, I'm going to double check the measurement for the armhole depth. Now with that, when we are working with it, as I said, this is for me to fine tune it because I've actually got a bigger bicep, and I find my customers that I do one-on-one fitting, if they do have a bigger bicep measurement, we tend to want to drop a little bit. Now I don't want to guess how much to drop, so that is where this measurement works for me. If you find you are just above that armhole measurement, please don't go change it. I don't want you to go higher onto your pattern. I really just need you to drop it if you need more space. Most of you are going to be working out exactly where that is, or as I mentioned, maybe slightly above this line. So Jackie is really falling for me. Her measurement was 21.5. I've got it exactly where that armhole depth is. We didn't have to change Jackie's armhole depth, so I'm happy with that. Like I mentioned, if you are falling below this line, and mine personally, on my personal pattern, I have to drop 1 centimeter, and all I do from that 1 centimeter, I recurve back into my armhole there. I don't want to scoop out too much, so for me, I literally just go and draw it, and as soon as I can go back into that armhole, that's what I do. So Jackie's pattern worked out here for me. Then the next measurement we did was her measurement, which was across the shoulder blade, and then hers was 43 centimeters and I measured 16 centimeters down. Now I've already gone and I've made a little cross for myself there, so 16 centimeters down, that is the line where I wanted to measure. Now 43, if I'm going to divide it in half, is 21.5 centimeters. I'm working with half a pattern and I'm just double checking myself. 43, where's 43? I've got 21.5 centimeters. So that is her body measurement without any added ease. When I work with the back, we do definitely want more ease than what we've got on the front. And depending on the shape of the body, how broad your back is, then I would say for me that I find comfortable about 3 centimeters to 4 centimeters. I'll rather have a little bit more on the back, and again, as I said, scoop out if needed when I'm doing the fitting. Now, with 3 centimeters, which is going to be the total ease, that means on half a pattern, I'm going to need a minimum of about 1.5 centimeter ease. So let's look at the measurement now. As I said, Jackie's was 21.5, and I'm just going to show actual body measurement again. I want you to see where it comes to, and I've made a little cross there. So now that is Jackie's body measurement. I need additional, I need ease. So if I'm going to be working on let's say my 1.5 centimeters, which is 5/8 of an inch, that means that my 21.5 plus 1.5 is going to give me 23 centimeters. That is my minimum that I really want to work with. And if I put 23 there and I'm running on that line, you can see with Jackie, she's perfectly on that line that we've drafted for her using our master pattern. So I'm happy with that. I don't need to make any changes. Some of you might find that you are going past that armhole because of the roundness or maybe prominent shoulder blades, and if you are maybe falling on that section, again, you are going to recurve for me from underarm point, getting that extra additional in, and we want to go from that area. So I like to basically, and this is really just a rough draft like that. I will do a rough line and then I go back to my designing stylus, do my designing stylus, and I get my curve. So wherever I've made that mark, I do like to from here work downwards and from there work it back into this area so that I get a smooth line going from my shoulder point. Please make sure that you keep the shoulder point at a 90 degree. If you're not at a 90 degree, you are going to get a very angular look if we're going from the back of the body to the front. And then if I sew my sleeve on, and I've got, and I'm just going to draw a line. Sometimes I see patterns doing that when we are drafting it. So now when I sew my sleeve on, because it's not a smooth transition from back to front, I get a fitting issue on my sleeve. And again, this is because of a mistake that we make on drawing our pattern. So I'm just trying to give you as much as possible on information so that when you are doing your first fit, you've already fine-tuned this pattern a little bit. So let's look at the length measurement now that I've done. So I'm going to measure from that center neck point, and I'm measuring down to my waistline. That was the measurement that I've done on Jackie's body as well, from that prominent bone to where I had the elastic on her waist. Now, when I measure this and I'm looking at this measurement, we are short 1.5 centimeters on the length to fit it to Jackie's body measurement. So I need to add 1.5 centimeters. Now, we know she's got roundness here, so this is where I'm going to need the length. This is where I'm going to add the additional length. If you find that you are shorter, then you might want to wait with any changes there because you've got the skirt on. I would rather still do the fit on my body and then on the body decide if I need to do a sway back adjustment. I won't go and guess now or start affecting my lines that I have here. So that I definitely always leave till I'm doing a fitting, and on my body I can fold out if needed to and then do the necessary changes. This step here is really to make sure that I've got enough fabric to go over my back and that I don't do a fitting and then see, well, I need to do a shoulder dart, I need to add length, and now I've got to go and redo a whole new sloper just to get this to accommodate my body. So to do this change now, we've got some leaflets for you. Sorry, this is printed a little bit skew, but we have got 2 leaflets. One is adding a shoulder dart, option 1, which Jackie is going to need, and that is for when we need to add length to this area to go over the curve of her back. And then we've also got the option 2, which is going to be just creating that dart over there but not giving us the additional length. And a lot of times I find just by adding this, especially if you've got more of a prominent shoulder, you don't need the length, but you do that for that shoulder blade, you get a beautiful fit on that. So I'm going to leave the link for you in the description box so you can go and get those free leaflets. Go download them for yourself, put them in your reference file, and use them when you are working with your patterns. So now let's go and just do this, and this is really step by step. I'm not going to go again in too much detail. We do have videos on this as well in Surefit Designs video channel where you can go and really see detailed work where Glenda does this. I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. So we need to go and draw a line across that blade area. Now I like to take my measurement from that center point of the neck, and where I've got that armhole depth measurement, I take that, and halfway through is really where I want to work. It might change because of your body. You might have more roundness happening here, or your roundness might be up there. I won't go higher than this. I will drop it down there, but my average is really working on that halfway point that I have over there. So you go and draw a line going 90 degrees out of this center back line, and then I'm going to create a shoulder dot. So I have to go and create a line where I'm going to be opening up. I take my halfway measurement of my shoulder, and I've made my mark there, and you can go either straight, so you're 90 degree into this line, or you can take your ruler, and I'm just going to grab my line drafter here. I like to actually match it up to that waist start point over there, because when I am going to be designing any princess lines, that angle there for me is already the angle that I'm going to need. So I do prefer to go and draw my line at that angle instead of a 90 degree. On the leaflet you will see it's drawn straight down in a 90 degree, but you can choose how you want that angle to be. Now when we do this step, we are creating pivoting points, and I'm going to have a pivot point on this section, and I'm going to have a pivot point on that area. So I'm going to be just putting my tape there. I'm going to be doing some tape there just to support my paper so it's not going to tear apart. So I will be cutting on this line to the armhole. I'm not cutting through the armhole, and then I'm cutting where that dot's going to be through that shoulder line to this point. I'm not going to be cutting through. I still want my pattern to be connected at that point. I've moved back to my board now. I do prefer when I do any pattern work to actually work on my cutting board, because I use these grit lines or measuring lines all the time when I'm doing my designs. So now what I've done, you'll see that I have cut, and I've got my pivot point at that section. We're going to create a dot, and I also have a pivot point at that armhole section over there. I've made sure that my center line is running on a center line. I've made sure this cutting line that I have is running on one of my lines here, so that when I add my 1.5, it's going to be easy to use my board as my guide. I really don't have to go and measure them. So my first step now, after I've done this cutting, is to go and add a piece of tracing vellum underneath this cut, where I'm going to be giving that added length now. I'm just moving this out of the way. I'm going to go and just tape this in place. So that is just so that I can open up my pattern and I can do the pattern work. Now with Jackie, we needed to give her that extra 1.5 centimeter. And I can see on my board here, and I think I'll just make a faint line so that you can see where that line is going to be. And I'm just going to use my marking pen. It's basically that is going to be my 1.5 centimeters. If you don't work with a measuring board, go to your measuring tape, make sure that that measurement is accurate. Go and measure it for yourself. But for that, I just find my board is adequate. It gives me accurate measurements. Now all I'm going to do, I'm going to open up. I'm creating length. And when I'm doing that, this line that I've cut there needs to run parallel to that line over there. It's got to be equal distance, 1.5 centimeters, 1.5. So one way that I also find I am accurate, my center line here is just continuing on this straight line that I've got running all the way through my pattern. So I'm just going to make sure everything is lining up, and then I can go and I'm going to tape it in place as well. Just going to do the tape like that. if you find that it's pulling a little bit there, at this point I do go and just pull it apart at that pivot point, because now everything is where it needs to be. I want my pattern to be flat. So I'm still making sure those points are matching there. And now I'm going to put another piece of tracing vellum, and while I've got it like this, I just don't want it to move. Just making sure it's lining up there. I'm just going to tape that down there as well. So I'm just going to add my tracing vellum in, and I'm going to create my dot. Now that is really what I love about doing flat pattern work, is that if I've got my slash lines where I'm going to be working on the pattern, if I cut on this line and I cut on that line, whatever I open here will transfer to the correct volume that I'm going to need there. I really don't have to go and do calculations or anything like that. Same as when we're doing any dot manipulation. When I move my dots, it will open up to the correct dot volume to where I'm moving it in the pattern. So that is our shoulder dot now that we've created, and I'm just going to give it some tape over there. Now, when we work with dots, as soon as I create a dot, we are talking about a designer's dot. I have to go to a dressmaker's dot. So I am going to pull up from this point, and I'm going to pull up, I would say about 3/4 of an inch, and that's going to be 2 centimeters. So I'm just going to, from that point, measure up 2 centimeters, and I'm going to just make a little dot for myself. That is where my dot point needs to be when I am sewing it. And now I'm just going to go and draw my dot. Now this is the pattern work that I needed for correcting Jackie's back pattern before she's going to do a sloper. Now one thing that I do want to mention, you might be someone that's going to need more length. With Jackie's I needed to add 1.5 centimeters. You might be needing more. In that case, you are going to be doing multiple slash lines to open up. I am going to put a link for you below so that you can go look at that video in the Surfer Designs YouTube channel, where Glenda actually demonstrates those multiple slash lines. If you do have more of a prominent roundness, then you will also have to have a center back seam. You will not be able to work with this on the fold because of that shape that you're going to need for that roundness of your back. So make sure that you go and look at all the videos that I've linked for you below. My last step now as well, just to true my pattern, I will make sure that I fold out this dot. I'm going to make sure that that dot extension or the dot roof there is going to be correct. And I'm also going to make sure that when it's folded out, I have a straight line running from neck point to shoulder point. When I also look at the pattern, I'm just standing at an angle, I can't see. If I don't have a smooth transition here where I've done the cut lines, I will make sure that I smooth this armhole out there as well. So that is just my final steps that I will do before we can move on to the fabric and go and cut it out. Please note that the pattern that I'm working with does not have any seam allowances. Our Surfer Designs patterns are stripped down patterns, no seam allowances. So if you've been following along and you are working with a commercial pattern, you will have to go and measure in that seam allowance. Most of the commercial patterns that we do get, which is your big 5, will have 1.5 or 5/8 of an inch. Just make sure that you look at what the seam allowance is for your independent pattern designers, and you will go in from that line, whatever the seam allowance is, and just with your pencil go draw those lines, because any measurements you do, any changes you do, needs to be on that stitching line and not on the line where seam allowance have been added. So with this now, I'm going to just add seam allowances because I know it's a stripped down pattern, and I use my designing stylus. Now we've got our clear stylus and our white stylus. The cutouts that we have there, if I go and put this on my line now to add seam allowances, if I go and draw with a pencil on that cut out line which is closest to the outer edge of my stylus, that is going to give me 1.5 or 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to go all the way around. I'm going to add my seam allowances, and then we are ready to go and cut out the fabric, and we can test Jackie's sloper on her body.